Welcome back to the AI Daily Brief Headlines Edition, all the daily AI news you need in around 5 minutes. Today is one of those days when almost every story in the headlines could actually be the centerpiece of a full episode. So we will rip through these, but I would not be surprised if we come back to some of these themes later in the week or next week as well. We kick off today with progress in the negotiation between OpenAI and Microsoft, where it appears that continued access to OpenAI's technology has been the key topic. Now, the two firms, for background, have been locked in a lengthy negotiation around OpenAI's plans to convert to a for-profit company. Last month, it seemed like we were getting near daily updates on how the talks were going, and it sounded like they were not going well. OpenAI were leaking that they were considering making an antitrust complaint, while Microsoft's position seemed to be that they held all the cards and were content to just run out the clock until the end of the year. That could force OpenAI to lose out on about $20 billion in funding that was contingent on the conversion. Now, however, it appears that cooler heads have prevailed and a deal is getting close. Bloomberg reports that the companies are in advanced talks to land a deal that would see Microsoft retain access to OpenAI's technology even if AGI is achieved. This is one of the weirdest parts of this deal, and everyone has commented on it, so we don't have to dwell on it too long. But basically, under the current deal they had, Microsoft was cut off from OpenAI's models once they reached some ill-defined state of AGI. What's crazier than that is that OpenAI's board had sole discretion to determine what counts as AGI. Now, Microsoft maybe thought that A, this was way far in the future, and B, they had partners at OpenAI's board who they could deal with rationally, meaning they weren't all that concerned about it when those deals were signed. But then, of course, the absolute utter fricassee around Sam Altman's firing then rehiring happened, and ever since then, Microsoft has, I believe, basically felt a responsibility to distance themselves from the potential for quackery happening based on that particular term. It should be noted that without an AGI declaration, the deal is set to expire in 2030, but in any case, it appears that that has become less of a stumbling block. Sources say that CEO Satya Nadella and Sam Altman discussed the restructuring personally at the Sun Valley Conference in Idaho earlier this month, describing the tone of the talks as positive, but with the caution that they could still hit a roadblock. The current reporting suggests that the companies are converging on an agreement to get rid of the subjective definition of AGI and substitute a revenue-based metric instead. Under these updated terms, it would be something like AGI being defined as a technology that can deliver $100 billion in total profits for Microsoft and other investors, effectively paying them out for profit-sharing agreements. Sources noted that another term prevents Microsoft from pursuing AGI themselves, and while it's not clear that Microsoft is looking to spin up a superintelligence team, the reporting does suggest that this has been a topic of discussion during the negotiations as well. Obviously, markets are rooting for this deal to get done. Goldman Sachs analyst Kash Rangan said, "If a deal were to be signed, it would take away a hurdle, at least from the investor's perspective. Both parties have so much to gain from this." Moving over to funding news, Anthropic's rumored valuation just keeps moving up as their latest round gets ready to close. Over the past month, we heard rumors that Anthropic were fielding investment offers at $100 billion, which increased to $150 billion last week. And now Bloomberg reports the number is $170 billion, and the company is, in their words, nearing a deal. Iconic Capital is reportedly leading the round, which is expected to raise between $3 and $5 billion. The source said that Anthropic has also been in discussions with the Qatar Investment Authority and Singapore's Sovereign Wealth Fund, which add to the rumors that Abu Dhabi's MGX is looking to invest as well. Now, holding aside who this money is coming from, they're basically at a place where sovereign wealth funds are kind of the only game in town with that sort of capital. What's more interesting is that the valuation definitely suggests that Anthropic is closing the gap with rivals. OpenAI's latest round, for example, put them at a $300 billion valuation, and Elon Musk was reportedly looking for a $200 billion valuation for XAI. But what's more impressive than the jump in valuation is the fact that it actually has a very specific reasoning that isn't just AI hype markets excited. Anthropic started the year at around 1 billion ARR. It took them a few months to get up to 3 billion ARR, and then it took them 1 month to get to 4 billion ARR, and another month to get to 5 billion ARR. In other words, revenue is absolutely surging right now. In fact, reports suggest that Anthropic is seeing revenue getting all the way up to 9 billion by year's end, which is just a phenomenally fast rate of growth. Semi-Analysis's AJ Karabi writes, "Anthro's API revenue has overtaken OpenAI's. And once I internalized that and its implications, I joined their ranks in believing code is the only thing that matters." Meanwhile, over in OpenAI land, the company continues to experiment not just with new models, although everyone is just frantically sitting here tapping our fingers waiting for GPT-5 at this point, but also new dedicated versions of their tools and specific agents focused on particular use cases. For example, the company has just released study mode for ChatGPT. In an announcement blog, they describe the feature as a learning experience that helps you work through problems step by step instead of just getting an answer. Essentially, the model will give students hints and nudges to reason out their own solution to a problem rather than just giving the answer. Anthropic released a similar study mode for Claude in April, but for everyday high schoolers, obviously ChatGPT is by far their most used product. Study after study reports that ChatGPT usage in schools is somewhere north of 80%, which, to use a joke I've used before here, and apologies, I am a dad after all, means that about 20% of people are lying. Now, OpenAI said that their study mode feature was developed with education experts to reflect behaviors that promote deeper learning. That includes, in their words, encouraging active participation, managing cognitive load, proactively developing metacognition and self-reflection, fostering curiosity, and providing actionable and supportive feedback. Now, I think that there is a lot here that's interesting. There is a societal question, an education question, also a competitive question. A lot of AI for education companies are now wondering what their future holds. But like I said, basically every news item in today's headlines could be its own episode, and we've still got a couple more to cover. For example, we have an update from NotebookLM. The latest new feature is called Video Overviews. And this is super interesting. Also in the context of that educational use case, although that of course is not the only use case. Google writes, "You can think of these as a visual alternative to audio overviews. The AI host creates new visuals to help illustrate points while also pulling in images, diagrams, quotes, and numbers from your documents. This makes it uniquely effective for explaining data, demonstrating processes, and making abstract concepts more tangible. Similar to audio overviews, you can tune the video output to match a particular knowledge level or target audience. That means you can use the same source material to generate a slideshow suitable for children or grad students." I'm actually thinking about a way to potentially use this to explain the idea of the bidder lesson and maybe what it means for enterprises in an LRS episode coming up at some point in the future. Alongside the video feature, NotebookLM also has a number of quality of life improvements. Users can now generate more than one overview, mind map, or study guide per notebook, and they can also explore more than one output at once. For example, listening to an audio overview while also perusing the mind map. Lastly, today we'll close on a meta story for that sweet synergy with our main episode. The company is now planning to allow AI during the interview process to better reflect the real world. Wired viewed a memo from earlier this month in which Meta called for mock candidates to test a new style of interview. The memo said, "Meta is developing a new type of coding interview in which candidates have access to an AI assistant. This is more representative of the developer environment that our future employees will work in and also makes LLM-based cheating less effective." Now, there's been a ton of reporting on this topic recently, suggesting that some of even the leading AI firms can't figure out how to deal with AI use in job interviews. Earlier this month, Anthropic released somewhat mixed guidance that they were looking for candidates who excel at collaborating with AI, while also advising candidates that they shouldn't actually collaborate with AI during the coding assessments. A Meta spokesperson said, "We're obviously focused on using AI to help engineers with their day-to-day work, so it should be no surprise that we're testing how to provide these tools to applicants during interviews." Now, honestly, there are probably a lot of ways to do this poorly, but some version of this was completely inevitable. I've talked before on this show about how we've had employees of Superintelligent in the past, developers, who we had to let go because they just would not adapt to the new world of agentic coding assistants. Which is not to say, of course, that those things are a cure-all or perfect or should be used for every different use case when it comes to coding. But it is so clearly a relevant skill set to be able to know how to navigate and get the most from that set of tools that they have to be incorporated in the application process in some way. One person doing a victory lap around this was, of course, Cluely CEO Roy Lee, whose entire company is premised on the idea that in a few years, things we consider cheating now will be just totally de rigueur. He posted the scoop of the announcement and said simply, "You're welcome, everyone." With that, though, let's move over to our main episode, which is still in the meta world, but a very different thing. Zuckerberg has laid out a vision for personal superintelligence and suggested that they're already seeing AI self-improvement.